Guys, welcome to Dev Domain. In today's video, we are going to learn about the exception hierarchy. So let's start. So first we will see a tree-like structure. This is a structure. This throwable is a parent class and exception and errors are its child classes. The exceptions are recoverable, means if there is an exception in the code, then we can recover it, means we can handle that exception. But in errors, error cannot be handled. Errors are not be recoverable. Suppose we do not have any space in the memory and we have to run a code, then we cannot recover it because we do not have the capacity of running that code. Okay, so that is the error. Now let's see the theory about it. So first is throwable. So throwable, as you have seen in the diagram, that it is a superclass of all errors and the exceptions in Java. So basically it is an parent class. Throwable contains basic methods like get message and print stack trace. Okay, like this message the throwable contains. So next is error. So it represents subsystem problems that you can usually can't recover from. Okay, so as we have seen in the diagram as well, the errors are not be recoverable. So let's see some examples. So first can be out of memory error. So that is when JVM runs out of memory. So that can be a out of memory exception. Next example can be stack overflow error. So that is when your recursion goes too deep. Next is the exception for problems that applications might want to catch. As we have seen that exceptions can be recoverable. So let's see the examples of exception. So first is the IO exception, that is input output exception. For example, the file is not found in the system. If the file is not existing in the system, then how we can access that file? So we will get an IO exception, that is input output exception. So next is SQL exception. So that is related to our database. We have given some database connectivity to our application as test, and that database is not been created in our SQL. Okay, so we get an error as SQL exception. So next is null pointer exception. This type of exception is related to if you are trying to using a null. Okay, so we will see this example in code as well. Suppose we have initialized a variable as null, trying to do some operations on it, let's say to uppercase or to lowercase. So it might give an error as null pointer exception. So next exception that we will get as array index out of bound exception. Next is the arithmetic exception. So we have taken this example in previous video. So if you have not watched it, so I will give the link in the description and you can go and watch. So if you are trying to divide a number by 0, so we'll get an exception as arithmetic exception. So let's see why this matters. So first is error handling. So that is, it helps you decide what to catch versus what might be unrecoverable. In error handling, so in what situation we can handle that error and in what situation we cannot be recover it. So next is code clarity. So that is cleaner code when you handle exceptions properly. If you are handling the exceptions properly, then we will get an clearer code obviously. So next is debugging. So as we use this hierarchy, it is easier to find and fix the problems when you understand the hierarchy. Okay, obviously it is helps to debug our code and finding the problems and fixing it. Okay, as we know the hierarchy of the exceptions, it is easier. So let's start with our practical session. So for that we will click on File Explorer, then we will click on SRC, then New, then we will create a class here. So for that, first we will give the package com.exception. We will give a class name as the error handling. Okay. So I have created a class as error handling. So first I will create a method here. So I will create a string here, string a is equal to null. So I've created a string and I assign a value as null. Okay. Now let's make this string as 2 uppercase. Okay. So for that we will just print a dot 2 uppercase. Okay. Now let's run the code and see what will be the output. So as you can see in the console that get an error as java.lang.null pointer exception, and we can't invoke the string to uppercase because a is null. So how we can handle this error? So for that we will use try and catch. So let's create the boilerplate for that. So try, and then here we will write catch. Okay, and this is the syntax for the try and catch, and here we will give the exception as null pointer exception, and we will give the reference name as n. Now we will put the risky code in the try block. So I will just cut it, and here I will just paste it. Okay, and if there is an error in the try block, so we will give the user friendly message from the catch block, that is can't make null to uppercase. Okay. So I've given this message as can't make the null to uppercase. Okay. So if we assign a null value to a string, so we cannot make that null to uppercase. So now let's run the code and see what will be the output. So as you can see, we have not get an error, so we have get as we can't make null to uppercase. So we have, let's fix the code. Now I will give some value to the string. So for that I will give, let's say as Rahul. So I've given the name to the string as Rahul. Now I've given a proper name to the string. Okay, the proper value to the string. Now let's see what will be the output. So you can see the output that we have get is Rahul in the uppercase. So this try block has been executed because we have given some value to the string, obviously, and the catch block has not been executed. Okay, so if there is no error in the try block, catch block will not be executed, and if there is an error in the try block, then catch block will be executed and it will handle the errors. Suppose you don't know what kind of exception it might be, so we can give in this null pointer exception, we will handle this exception as, so we will write exception and e. Okay, so this exception can handle any kind of exception, whether it can be array out of bound exception or arithmetic exception, null pointer exception. It might catch any kind of error, okay, any kind of exception through this exception class. For that we will give the string as null only. Okay, so I will give the null and check whether the exception can handle this error or not. So I will run the code again. So as you can see, class has been printed. Okay, so and this exception can handle the errors, okay, of null pointer exception as well. So this is all about the exception hierarchy, and we have taken one example as well. So thank you for watching this video.